Okay, so hopefully you should be able to hear me now. Third time's the charm, as they say. I completely understand the technical side. I used to do sound engineering for a bit at a local church, so I understand the fun it can be to do sound. So really appreciate the tech guys at the back for getting me set up there. So welcome to this session. Hopefully you've not heard all of the interesting stuff. Hopefully what I've got to present is a little bit interesting to you. And this session is really around skills for success is kind of the title around it. We are looking at the admin skill set. And just to give you a little bit of an overview as to me before I go, I'm not going to read through the whole slide because that list is getting bigger and bigger. So I'm going to have to really kind of streamline that slide. But the things I think I want you to know before we dive in is this. So I was an admin for 5.5 years before moving to consultancy. 4 times certified, and with 2 of those certifications being admin and advanced admin. Only got advanced admin fairly recently. And on top of that, I do a lot of stuff in the community. As you might have seen my face every now and then on LinkedIn or Twitter or through my blog. But one of the things I'm really proud of is my involvement in the Open Source Commons program, where I am one of the group leaders. At the moment, I'm actually the only group leader for the admin skills group. So this subject that we're covering today is something that's a bit of a passion of mine. And one of the things I really want to see is admins who come into the ecosystem really get the grips with the skills that are needed to really succeed. Because coming from seeing quite a few different orgs over the years and also working on an org myself and coming in with no experience, I was an accidental admin. So I came with no experience. I was dumped into essentially a senior position with no experience, no certifications, no training or anything. I very much understand what it can be like to be an admin and muck things up. I'm sure many of us might have felt like we've been there before, but that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about us getting kind of our skill set right. But moving on, so I don't want to waffle on too much. A little bit before the session, I posted out a poll yesterday, and I thought I'd open up with this, because I wanted to ask the question, which one of the Salesforce admin skills do you want to learn over the next year? And honestly, I'll tell you a little bit about it, but I couldn't actually put out the poll in the way that I originally wanted to because of the limitations of the poll. So I put it out as a free-form one instead, and honestly, I found the results to be a lot more interesting than it would have been just to have the set options on the poll. And you can see here just a bit of a word cloud from the results. And what's really interesting about this, and this will kind of lead into a bit more of the introductory piece, is that a lot of these aren't actually the skills that Salesforce have said are admin skills. A lot of these are tied to the skills, but they aren't the skills themselves. However, you will see on my previous slide, I would diagnose myself as a Flow fanatic. So it really makes me smile when I see so many people putting in that they want to learn Flow over the next year. And to give you a little spoiler, we are going to talk a little bit about Flow, but you're not going to hear anything technical about Flow. It's all going to be on a principle level. So I thought that was interesting because oftentimes it's interesting to see what we identify as skills. And you can see here how many of these things that people have responded to are actually products or tools and how we identify them as skills themselves. So we've got things in there like Tableau, Marketing Cloud, and controversially, for an admin, we've also got Apex. And if you know why I'm saying controversially, Apex is traditionally a developer tool. And it is something that is good to learn, particularly if you move into a role where you have to do a lot more technical work and coding. But traditionally, it's not been an admin role. Although I don't have it as a resource, but there is a very good video on YouTube that you can watch from David Giller's Brainiac show with Adam Olshansky, who is a Salesforce MVP, who talks about admins can code as well. So for whoever put Apex on that poll, there is some stuff out there to help you learn Apex. But we're not going to be talking about Apex in this session, thankfully, because that is not my strong suit. So you don't want to hear me talk about Apex because I'll give you tips and tricks to basically do really bad Apex. So you don't really want to hear that. But moving on, I'm going to set the scene a little bit for yourself. Like many here, I watched Dreamforce last year virtually on Salesforce Plus. And I watched the admin keynote. Just out of curiosity, how many here watched the admin keynote last year? Or how many even know what I'm talking about the admin keynote? Great. So quite a few. And in the admin keynote, there was about a 30-second bit where Ella Marks put this slide on the screen for the first time and showed these admin skills. So these are what Salesforce defined as the 14 admin skills. And I know what you're probably thinking here. 14, that's far too much. We'll tap onto that in a little bit. But as I was watching the session, my gut straight away turned around and goes, because this slide came up, was on there for probably less than 30 seconds, and nothing else was said. It was just, here's the skills, let's move on. And I'm sitting there watching it and going, okay, now you've dangled this carrot in front of us. Tell us more, please. How do you define product management? How do you define user management? How do you define security management? So with that, I kind of came up with a bit of an idea. And I'm going to kind of promote this a little bit. And there is actually, you'll see in just a second, there's actually a couple of people in the room here who have been involved in this. But my idea was simple, and that was the community need to hear about these skills. They need to understand what they are. So why not ask people in the community who do this kind of work day in, day out to write a blog post, explain what each skill is. So originally I was going to put this on my personal blog, and I thought that'd be quite good. It'll get some reads. And then Salesforce came a calling. And I got a contact from one of their team who basically manages the admin blog. And she said, Mark, we've seen that you want to put this series out there. We want to do the same thing. Do you want to combine our efforts? So I went and spoke to the people who had already agreed to take part in it because I thought that was the right thing to do. And everybody said yes. So it became a Salesforce series on the admin blog. And I thought this was a really great thing because, being in full transparency, I really like writing the blog that I do, but most of the time we'll get maybe a couple of hundred reads. Around about 500 views per post, maybe a couple hundred reads at the most. This also admin blog will get thousands of reads, thousands of views, if not millions. So by moving it over to the admin blog, the impact of this series really kind of grew exponentially in just a simple yes. So here's the series that we've got. And you'll see here there's a couple of people in the room. I see Raksha's in the front row, and Connie's here as well, who have been part of the series. And some of the faces you might recognize. If you were downstairs for Vicky's session demo, Vicky's on the screen here, and her post is the one that's just come out this past Tuesday on Designer's Mindset. So these are running at the moment on a weekly basis. We are up to Vicky's post, so that is post 10 in the series. We've got 4 left, and not including the outro. And just to give you a little bit of overview as to the reach of the series, because I'm really proud of this. We've got 14 different authors representing 6 different countries, with 2 Golden Hoodie recipients and a Salesforce MVP. Now, if you're a bit northern like me, the first thing that came to my head is it sounds a little bit like the 12 Days of Christmas. But this is a really good series, and it's one of the things I'm actually probably the most proud of actually being involved with in the community so far, because we're giving people a voice. A lot of these people on here, on there, some of them you might know, some of you might not, but for the vast majority of people on there, it's the first time they've had a post go out on the Salesforce admin blog. So it's a really good, big accomplishment for them, which I'm really proud of. Also very, very chuffed with my core user group leaders on that list as well. But you might be thinking here, well, what are these skills? Well, I'm going to have to disappoint you a little bit and pull off a little bit of a bandage. We're not going to talk about the skills in detail in this session. Why? Because there's 14 skills. So I'm not going to be able to give you the value of going through each skill in this session. What I will be doing, though, is I'll be giving a bit of a demo of the admin skill kit, which is available through the Salesforce admin website. And I'll be picking up on 3 skills, which I think personally are skills to prioritize as admins over the next probably couple of years or so. And one of them, for those who know me, will probably not be a surprise for anybody. And the other 2 are basically, I'll pick up on them a little bit, but a lot of them are tied to stuff that Salesforce is doing, which we as admins have to then kind of fall in line with. So, but with that being said, I'm going to give you a bit of a demo of the admin skills kit. I'm going to come on my screen and I'm going to show you on this. There is a Google Doc I've prepared, which you'll be able to see from basically either if you take a picture from the screen or when the slides go out, you'll be able to get that link to see this Google Doc, which has links to all of the posts, and I'm updating that each week until the series is done. And there's a bunch of other resources on there as well, including a link to the admin skills kit. So the admin skills kit, if you simply just go to the Salesforce admin website and search for skill kit, or you just Google Salesforce admin skill kit, you'll find it straight away. It's one of the very first things that comes up on Google. And sorry, I think I've triggered somebody's phone now. And you can see here, we've got all the skills along it in this section here. And we can scroll down and we can see all of the rest. And these are actually really, really built up in quite a helpful way, because if I show you project management, for example, you'll see here, it comes up with 3 tabs. It comes up with some notes for job seekers and admins. It comes up with notes for employers, and it comes up with notes for resources. So we can see here, I'm not going to go for each of them, but I am going to show you the employees one, because one of the things I think is very important in this kind of realm is for employees to understand what these skills are. I have seen many job descriptions over the years where I've seen employees looking and asking admins for things like Apex knowledge, asking for things like Visual Force, things which aren't traditionally admin skills, but because they're looking at the Salesforce buzzwords, they put them on the job spec. So it's so important for employees to understand what they should be expecting from an admin in order to have reasonable expectations for the role. Because again, going back to the Apex analogy, the vast majority of admins aren't really going to have Apex knowledge. So having that on the job description is going to lead to potentially some challenges along the way. So this is so important. And you can see here we've got project management. And this side of things is fairly consistent. But as well, you've also got a resources tab as well, which gives you some links to other articles and might give you a link to Trailhead badges and those kind of things. So this is really, really good stuff. And a lot of this came out of a survey. I'll show you business analysis as well, just so you've got an example on the screen as well. And a lot of this came out of a survey that was sent out to admins about a year ago, where I asked them for feedback on these skills. And so this is, getting to this point, it's been over a year's worth of work. I remember the survey going out last February, I think it was, and the skill kit came out in April. So we can see here again. And it's fairly self-explanatory on this side, and this is really, really good as well. But I'm going to move on. I'm going to go back to my slides. And we're going to pick up on some quick points about the skills list. Now, the thing I want to really kind of emphasize on this is that if you're an admin, you don't necessarily have to have all of these skills straight away. It's important to kind of spend time to learn these skills. But if you're sitting there and you look at those skill sets and go, crumbs, I don't have half of those skills on that list, it's okay. That does not make you a bad admin. Honestly, for me, one of the ones I found a lot more challenging until I moved into Cloud Galacticos, where I'm working now, was change management. Because I came from the non-profit space, and not to kind of say too much in the negative sense, but it is very common in the non-profit space to configure in production. And a lot of us are guilty of that, and I was too. So change management was an area that I had to learn a lot about, and had to learn quite a bit quickly after I moved into my current role. The admin role is also a journey as well, and that's, in a sense, that's why they call it the career path. If any path you go on, a path is intended for you to go in a direction. So a career path is a journey. You will hopefully be going forward in your career journey, but it is you don't start in the same place as you finish. Whenever you finish being an admin, or even if you never finish an admin, you'll still progress along the way. Also, on one side, you'll most likely gravitate towards certain skills. For me, I'll be completely transparent. I love process automation. Those who've read my blog over the years, over the last year or so, will know I absolutely love flow. And you'll gravitate towards certain skills probably more than others. And that's also okay. That could potentially help you in career prospects further down the line. You might end up moving into another role where you end up focusing on the thing that you're interested in a lot more. But you'll probably gravitate to some ones a bit more, and also there'll be ones that you pick up a lot easier than others. Some skills, to be completely blunt about it, just aren't going to come naturally, and you have to work really hard at them. Other ones will come, as the old expression goes, as easy as pie. Experience and Trailhead as well are two of the best teachers that you can have in order to learn. Trailhead, I will put that in as a bit of a mixed bag at times, honestly. I love Trailhead. I have almost 600 badges, and I got most of those badges in less than 12 months. So I do like Trailhead. But oftentimes, Trailhead is fairly guilty of kind of giving a hold your hand approach, where it can be very easy to not learn anything from Trailhead because you just followed what's on the badge. So this is why experience comes in so handy. And this is what I see on the process automation front specifically, but it applies across the whole admin board, which is one of the best pieces of advice I can give anybody, is to get hold of a dev org and just go in and have a play with Salesforce. Come up with ideas, try new things. That's how you learn. If you look at some of the flows I have built in a dev org, those are the kind of things you should never ever put into an org for a client or for your own company. But I've built flows that I've just went, I wonder if I can do this. And most of the time I've been able to do it. But those are things I would never ever put into an actual org. I just experimented with them. And those things help you learn along the way. I know there's a session about it earlier on as well, but mentorship is such a key thing as well in that. Honestly, I probably wouldn't be in the job I'm in now if it wasn't for somebody who has been a bit of a mentor with me. I spoke with him on a call middle of last year, having a bit of a vent about where I was in my current role. I liked the transparency. I loved the company that I was in previously, but I was at a point where there wasn't much more I was going to be able to do in terms of growth and learning, and I wanted to go out and learn more. And he was the one who told me, you need to find a new job, and you need to be gone from your current company in 6 months. 2 months later, I was in a new job. And the thing I also wanted to point out as well is if you're just starting out, because I don't know how many people in here have been in the admin space for like less than a year, 6 months, whatever. If you're just starting out, don't worry, you will get there, because as the old cliche goes, practice makes perfect. Or at the very least, practice makes very good. And I'm going to move on these. I have no idea where these are animated. These were animated yesterday, so I will go over these. So these are the 3 skills I recommend prioritizing over the next year. The one that I mentioned that most people would not be surprised at is process automation. And the reason for these is because process building workflow rules are retiring. We actually now have a set date for these, or shall we say have an approximate set date against Safe Harbor. And that is that the end of life for process building workflow rules is going to be sometime in 2025. So really, at this point, admins have 3 years to get the grips of flow. And that might sound a bit panicky. However, there's a lot of good content out there for admins. And as well, with that, I do put on that flow's learning curve. For some admins, again, just being truthful here, flow can be a very steep learning curve, because there are elements of flow which very much link to a developer's mindset. In particular, things like naming convention, learning when to use invocable actions for Apex, and so on. So there's a bit of nuance around that tied to the developer role with flow. And as well, flow is very different from a UI perspective to something like Process Builder. Under the hood, they're both exactly the same. But from a UI perspective, when you build a Process Builder, it looks very different to flow. So there's can be a big learning curve with that. The other skill I've got on my list, the second one to recommend, is security management. And you'll notice the thing about why I've recommended these skills here And security management is based around the fact that Salesforce have just announced this year a Trailblazer DX. I keep wanting to say a Trailhead DX, but it's Trailblazer DX now. That they are recommending that admins focus on using permission sets as their basis for security management rather than profiles. Now, those of us who have been in the admin space here for quite a while, you will have probably used profiles to handle your security management for a long time. And you might have potentially tens or even hundreds of profiles. So moving all of that to permission sets can be a bit of a work. Now, there is stuff out there that can help with those resources. But as well, there's the side of it where, and this is the third point down, where Salesforce are recommending that permission sets be based on tasks rather than roles. So rather than creating a permission set for senior management or reporting manager, those kind of things, they're recommending you use permission sets for things like multi-factor authentication, access to Slack, those kind of things. So that's a bit of a different mindset in comparison to what admins are used to, because traditionally with profiles, we've gone for role-based essentially. So we've got like minimum access, for example. We've also gone with like management level, those kind of things. So it's a shift in our thinking and our methodology to how we tend to have done security management over the years. And with that, there's going to have to be a migration of permissions as well. And that's the second point up on that list. So all of the things that we have in profiles will eventually have to be migrated into a permission set. And Salesforce obviously recommending limiting of profiles. And there's some work that they're doing around the default side of things. But the reason I've recommended those two in particular is because these are big changes. Again, going back to process automation, historically most admins will have worked with workflow rules or process builder. And a lot of admins who I've talked to over the last couple of years have veered away from Flow even after the announcement came out. And again, you saw from that list that we had at the beginning, the biggest response from that poll that people put in was Flow. Because we know that these are big changes and we've got to get to grips with these things pretty quickly. Which leads me onto my third skill, which is user management. Again, you might disagree with this. This is a subjective list, just based on my view. But here's the thing. With these big changes that we are having to make in our orgs, like the migration of automation, the change to security management, the end users that we support are going to need help to with these things, because those changes are going to affect them. So again, lots of changes going on. Change is hard. And on top of that, as admins, we're still going to be dealing with all of the usual stuff that we have to deal with. So you're still going to be getting like those emails once or twice a day, maybe, or however often you get them, going, I've locked myself out of Salesforce again. Can you reset my password, please? You're still going to get those messages from new users going in, I went to see all the records assigned to me and I can't see a single one. And you have to then turn around and go, okay, we've just set you up as a user. You're on recently viewed and you've not viewed any records yet. That's why you can't see anything yet. And all of the other stuff that we would deal with, which almost at times you might want to pull your hair out a little bit in private, obviously in private. But we're still going to have to do with all the stuff that we would normally do as admin, on top of these big pieces of work. So again, say this is entirely subjective, and please feel free to disagree. I mean, when we get to the Q&A, I'd love to hear if you have any different opinions on that. But these are my three, and admittedly I'm a bit biased on one because I really love process automation. But these ones I think are pretty big areas because of all the changes that Salesforce are doing. And so if these changes weren't going on, this might be a little bit different. And I think that's part of the admin role as well, is understanding the landscape of Salesforce. What is Salesforce saying that is best practice? What is Salesforce making changes to that affect the work that we do? How do we need to change our patterns and our methodologies based on what Salesforce is doing? Because at the end of the day, Salesforce is owned by Salesforce. So we have to, where possible, keep in line with what Salesforce are putting out there. So this has probably been a bit quick. I have to do a time check. I have no idea what time it is, so this might be a little bit quick. But this link on the screen here will show you, has the document on there that I mentioned at the beginning of the session. And on there, there's a list of resources on there. Has every single one of the blogs that's currently live from the Admin Skills series, and it also has other resources well relating to it. One other thing I do want to briefly mention on that, which I don't have a slide on, is the badge that's on Trailhead around the essential habits for Salesforce admins. Honestly speaking, I think that's probably one of the best badges that I've done on Trailhead, and I think it ties very, very well with this subject. Because one of the things that we would want to do as admins is build up good habits to help us actually perform our duties well. So those habits are stuff like keeping on top of releases. Easier said than done because you've got the release notes, and I'm sure every one of us in here have tried to maybe read a set of release notes at a time and have gone, right, this is a lot of stuff to read. Personally, on that, for me, I tend to read the stuff that is relevant to what I do or stuff I'm interested in, and then rely on somebody else like Salesforce to kind of point out other things that might flag up as interesting. So that's also a good tip. Read content widely. But that as well, there's loads of some there's YouTube videos and all sorts on that document. But that's what I've got, and I don't have no idea what time it is. So we've got some time for Q&A. And I would be more than happy to take some questions if anybody has any particular questions. And I'm hoping I can see people if they've got hands up or whatever. So if you've got any questions, please do feel free to shout out. Yes? It is. Yeah. 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 For me personally, I would say that the designer's mindset, which is where the UX side of things falls into, is something that should be a prominent skill. Period. That's just my opinion on it, because admins now, it might sound a little bit controversial, but sometimes I go back and forth in my head and I wonder if the job title admin is correct, because the vast majority of work that we do now as admins is configuration, which involves UX design, basically making sure that our pages are laid out in a way that is accessible, that is manageable, and is helpful to the users, and also works. So you mentioned there about dynamic forms. I love dynamic forms personally. It's one of my favorite things in Salesforce to do, and Christine did a really good session earlier on about dynamic forms. But we've got to also bear in mind things like how does implementing a lot of dynamic elements affect page speed, for example. So one of the things you might not hear too often is if you have dynamic forms, dynamic actions, dynamic related lists all on a page at the same time, it will slow down performance. And that's a part of the user interface and user experience realm as well. Looking at how we do that. Now, granted, for most companies out there, most small to medium companies, it's probably not going to be too big of a deal for the speed wise. But for the fairly big companies that are working with complex pages, it is going to be a bit of a pain potentially to work with. But UX, I would say, like use designer's mindset, it's a one that should be kind of in the forefront of our mind, as an ongoing thing. I don't think it's something that you necessarily should go, okay, let's particularly focus on this now, and we'll, because there's big changes coming up. I think it's just something that should just be on the admin's mind as much as possible, because at the end of the day, we are designing and configuring solutions on a day-to-day basis for our users. So that, I think it's just a constant, in my opinion. Any other questions? Yes. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, definitely. I completely agree with that. I was in a session probably about a year and a half ago, where the whole concept was basically, treat end user support like a murder investigation. Now that sounds really controversial in one sense because of the title of that kind of thing. But the whole thing is kind of like you got to think of it like a bit of a whodunit, essentially. So a user comes up to you and goes, "This is going wrong in Salesforce." You troubleshoot it, and nothing happens. Happens all the time. Honestly, happens all the time. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the challenge really with that is, and this could be easier said than done, because again, as admins, half the time, most of the time when we troubleshoot stuff, we troubleshoot it as if they've done what they're meant to do. And most of these issues come from, and again, this is not to sound any kind of like horrible to end users, because we love our end users and we are there to support them. But 9 times out of 10, if they've done something in Salesforce which comes back with an error or something like that, 9 times out of 10 it's because they've done something that they shouldn't be doing in one way or another. Whether that is they've missed a required field, for example, or you've got a validation rule and they haven't put in the things correctly. So one of the big things you can try and do, and again, this is easier said than done, is try and get into their minds a little bit when you're trying to troubleshoot. So 9 times 10, you want to try and think of, okay, how can somebody muck this up? And you then want to try and find which one of those options is the right one. Because again, end users most of the time, it's those kind of things. And I think you in one sense, you do have to believe them a little bit. Because when an end user comes to you and says, there's an error in Salesforce, or Salesforce isn't working, usually there's enough truth in that to go, okay, there's something going on here. But the vast majority of the time, at least in my experience, what's going on isn't actually an error, or it's just somebody kind of like, again, not filling in fields properly, or those kind of things. But we say that as well, and there's also another side of it as well, which is sometimes that principle also applies to us as well. It's talk about other admins. I was in a session at Czech Dreaming a couple of weeks ago, and a question came up about dynamic forms. And the question was, can we use before saved flows to bypass entering required fields? And I was like, no. And I'm sitting there in the back of my head, not wanting to be rude to whoever said that. And so we can be guilty of this as well as admins, because sometimes we look at things in the sense of shoulds, and sometimes we miss things. So it happens on both sides of the coin, and that's one of the things I think is important with that category, because sometimes it is the user. Sometimes it might be something that we've done, we thought was right to do, was the right approach, and then it hasn't worked. I do sort of have an example of that from a job I did recently for a client, where I built the flow, and I thought it was done right, and then I completely did not realize that flows do not respect record type configuration. So I had to spend a whole bunch of time fixing that, but that was my fault. It wasn't the end user, it was something that I'd done wrong. So again, the point I would make here is, remember, sometimes it is the user, sometimes it's us. And the skill is to remember, and I guess the skill is to know which one is which, and also, if it's us, own up to it and actually do something about that. Yvonne. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. That's one of those ones. I think it depends on the individual specifically, but for me, although I work in consulting now, I would still very much classify myself as an admin. It is most of what I do in my role as a consultant is admin tasks. And I remember having a conversation with this with somebody at Salesforce a couple of months ago where we talked about this after the series started launching, and I made the case of Salesforce admin principles are part of every role, regardless of whether your job title is consultant, whether you're a dev, whether you're an architect, whether you're a designer, whether you're a BA. Admin principles are part of every single role. No, no. I think there's elements of a way you could do where you can be a beginner admin, but I've never once felt admin as being like a beginner job or being like a stepping stone career path. I know a lot of people do, but for me, I think we need admins who are committed for the long haul and stick around, because every org is going to need an admin, and as well, coming from the consultancy space, again, for me, most of what I do as a consultant is admin. So I just got a different job title. So a lot of times you might be working in consultancy, but you still could well be realistically an admin. You're just working with multiple clients and doing multiple different projects instead of working with one company and doing all the stuff for that particular company. But no, I personally don't think admins. For some people, it might be a stepping stone, depending on where they want to go. If you want to go for, like, say, architect down the admin pathway, you would need to start out as an admin and then progress to becoming an architect. So it's one of those ones where it's a bit more nuanced than simply just saying no, I think. But I would say we do need admins for the long haul. I was an admin for 5 years, so I stuck at it for a long, long time. And again, I still do quite a lot of admin in my role. Yes. Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Yeah. So my initial answer to that is there's two things that I think is part of communication skills that we don't necessarily talk about. Oftentimes we talk about communication skills as how we obviously communicate to others, what we write in emails, how we speak to people. But in terms of communication skills, two of the biggest benefits that you will have is patience. You as an admin, we know that oftentimes we do need patience when we deal with these issues where it's not an issue, those kind of things. But patience is to go for the old cliche, patience is really a virtue, and that's a big area with communication, because sometimes it takes time for people to start to see you in that kind of light. Fortunately, I haven't actually dealt with that too much myself, because I've been hired as someone who knew what I was doing, and a lot of that's down to confidence. So if you can turn around and you can convey what you're saying as if to say, look, I know what I'm talking about, listen to me. Like, I don't say it in those words, but I think you get the point of what I'm saying. If you're confident enough to say, look, this is what the issue is, and you can outline it, people will eventually start to listen to you. You will always have the odd few people who will like ignore you, maybe. But what you do with them, and this is a little cheeky strategy, you tell your line manager and let them deal with it. The other side as well, which brings into the line manager bit, is having people who are, you could call, allies in what you do. So sometimes, again, there's some people out there, as much as we want to be there for all of our end users, some end users, you need somebody else to kind of do the talking to on your behalf, because they might not listen to you for whatever reason. So having people you go to and go, hey, look, I'm really struggling to kind of get this across to this individual. Can you help? That can really go a long way as well. So those are two things I would put onto that question again: patience and having people that you can go to for that additional support. Because sometimes, as admins, we do need help from other people. Yes. Yeah. So, my honest response would be no to that, because I don't necessarily think it's fair to expect an admin to be able to write Apex and Visual Force and those kind of things. I don't think that should be an expectation. However, as an admin, if you want to go and learn that, there's no reason why you can't, and that might potentially help you in your career prospects as well. So while I would say it's not a requisite to the role, if you want to go for that, go and learn Apex, then I would say more power to you, kind of thing. Again, I mentioned Adam Olshansky's video early in the week, early in the session that he did, and that was a really good session. That for me was an eye-opening one because he showed how easy it can be for admins to learn the basics of Apex, and so that is a really good resource to go to. But again, I would say you don't have to know Apex, but if you want to learn, go for it. There's nothing wrong with building up your skill set in areas that you're interested in, because you never know, that might take you down a different career path that you might want to go down. Okay. Any other questions? I'm just going to quickly check the time. Okay, I think it's past, so I think we are possibly about up to time. Yeah, great. So we're waving. So sorry if we are at time. If you do have any questions, please feel free to give me a shout. Put in the Q&A in the chat and let me know. So thank you for coming.